everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Sandy.
And this is the Italian American Stories Podcast. Happy Halloween! Today's episode is going to be a little different. We're not going to focus on a particular Italian family or just one Italian American. Instead, we're going to talk about haunted houses, ghost stories, but of course it will all wrap around Italian Americans. So, happy Halloween, Mom!
Happy Halloween to you and everybody else also.
Yeah, thanks. Do you have a favorite story from Halloween when you were a kid? I just put her on the spot. She's looking at me like, what are you doing?
So many years ago, I'd have to think about that.
Right? I just remember pillowcase. Having a pillowcase to get all the candy.
Well, yeah, that was my childhood Halloween also, so that's why you had it.
Exactly. I think a lot of people born in like 80s and below or 80s and before had pillowcases. But why wouldn't you? I mean, it holds a ton of candy. It's sturdy. It's not going to rip like a bag. So, like I said, today's going to be a little different. I dug through a ton of newspaper databases and found some really interesting and spooky articles that we're basically just going to either sum up or read today because they're kind of interesting. So let's get spooky, Italian style.
Here we go.
Here we go. All right, so the first article we're going to go over is from the Brooklyn Daily Eagle, and this article came out on June 2nd, 1896. And the headline was really interesting to me. So it reads, "The police looking for an Italian rag picker's ghost." So of course, for me, question number one, what is a rag picker?
I've never heard of that.
I hadn't either. Couldn't tell you what it was. And so I looked it up on good old Google, and according to Google, a rag picker is someone who goes around collecting rags off the street, out of trash, or even by knocking on people's doors and asking for people's old rags. So question number two was why? Like, why would you do this? Like, it kind of reminds me of now where people collect cans, or kids used to collect cans to take to the recycling bin place.
Yeah, it's some sort of benefit to them.
Exactly, to earn some money. So apparently the rag picker would gather old rags and then turn them into companies that made paper. So I've never even heard of that. Learn something new every time we do a podcast. So here's how the story goes. The Italian residents near Atlantic Park, they were not sleeping at night out of fear of a ghost haunting the area. So apparently a woman said that she spotted a figure that was in all white and roaming around or floating along the streets. And so because of this story, people were either up all night out of fear or they were out ghost hunting. The brave ones were out ghost hunting. So the residents and the police, they were not able to track this figure down, and they searched in local shelters and asked around the neighborhood, but nobody knew of any alive, quote, person that fit this description. But the Italians, they were pretty sure they knew what was going on. So about a month prior, one of their fellow Italians, Catalino Carrillo, he was the rag picker, he was actually killed in front of his home by a trolley car. And where is this one at? This is in Brooklyn. Okay, so they had a trolley car, and he was struck by it and killed. And this was on May 18th, 1896. And poor Catalino, he was just crossing the street in front of his house when he was struck and ran over by the trolley car. So Richard Baisley and William Erskine were the motorman and the conductor for the Nassau electric trolley car that ran over Catalino. And actually, these two were charged with homicide and arrested.
Wow.
I know. Which I kind of made me wonder, because it's not like a trolley car, as far as I know. Like, it's not like you could swerve to hit him, but like, yeah, they were both for homicide.
They didn't have lights or...
Yeah.
So it almost sounds like the guy just kind of walked out in front of them.
Unfortunately, that's kind of what I think too, because, I mean, unless they were supposed to be stopping or supposed to stop at a certain point and they didn't, but anyways.
Oh, well, that's true if they ran a stop.
Yeah. But later on, they were actually both exonerated by a coroner's jury, so
yeah, maybe
it was just kind of a, hey, you killed this guy, like, right, we're gonna take you in. And then as they looked into it, they were like, okay, it wasn't your fault, just an unfortunate accident. So a lot of the Italians that were reporting seeing the figure in white said that the figure was always in the same spot where Catalino was killed. So that's where they would kind of first see this figure, this white figure. And they said that they knew it was him because he was always carrying the bag and stick he had with him when he was searching for rags. So it's kind of like his spirit is almost just going...
Just hanging out there.
Hanging out there. Like, in fact, an Italian man even said that it was like he was reenacting his death. So now the writer/reporter of this article, he tries to justify the hysteria coming from the Italian community. And the reporter says that the Italians may be concerned, but they are not alone because, quote, the better class of residents are not resting as quietly as they did 2 weeks ago. So there's that. It's
I'm not sure whether I should remark on that.
I know, exactly. It's like, hey, these Italians may be in hysterics, but maybe it's justified because these other better residents,
right,
they're scared too.
Right.
Like, you jerk.
Well, there you go.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So these, quote, better class of residents also reported seeing many of the exact same things that the Italians saw. And they all said that the spirit would float along the road where he was killed and then wander into a Miss Mullen's yard and then fade away into a grape arbor. I meant to look up what a grape arbor is. Like, just a grape filled with vines and trees?
I guess. I don't really know.
I don't either. Yeah. So, but he would wander into the grape arbor, maybe hoping to find some wine. I don't know. Make some wine. Mom and I made wine this morning.
We did.
Well, we started
started
the process, so that's probably why I have wine on the brain. So, although one thing that was different was the better women, they were always fainting at the sight of the ghost. It's not as tough as those Italian women.
There's your proof.
There's your proof. So 2 police officers, they went out one night on a, quote, quiet hunt for the ghost. And one officer, Officer Quigley, he hid behind some bushes, while the other officer, Officer Stack, hid behind a fence. But the next morning, they reported that they saw nothing. And so one of the officers, he even said that this ghost better be careful scaring people at night because the Italian community is very worked up and probably won't hesitate to shoot the first thing that approaches them and looks like a ghost. I mean, we're not fainting and we will take out the ghost. So obviously this officer, he
was
just
a non-believer.
He just didn't believe that this ghost, I think he thought it was like a prankster.
Right.
Which, that's a mean prank. This person just died a month ago. If it's a prankster, you know?
Right.
So,
Huh.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story, though.
It is interesting. And it's kind of, you know, one thing I like about doing these little snippets and tidbits instead of a full-on story is you can kind of just get a quick little glimpse into society at that point.
Right,
in time.
the way they viewed the Italians.
Exactly, yeah, and it's just, it's interesting to see it. So yeah, that's the story of poor Catalino, and I couldn't find anything after this. Nothing, I couldn't even find Catalino in Ancestry.com, so...
Yeah, it would be interesting if there was a follow-up.
Exactly.
To see how long the soul ghost, or if they actually solved it.
Exactly, just to kind of see what happened, but couldn't find anything, so... And let's see, what year was that? 1896, so that was a while ago. All right, so let's go to our next story, and we're actually going to stay in New York for this story as well, but we're going to jump over to Staten Island and talk about the home that sits at 420 Tompkins Avenue. It's the Garibaldi-Meucci Museum. Well, it's a museum now. It used to be the Meucci house. And so, yeah, that's right. It's the house where 2 pretty famous Italians lived at one time, Antonio Meucci and Giuseppe Garibaldi. So I'm just going to talk about each one separately, and these are going to be a real down and dirty, fast, brief history of who Antonio Meucci was and who Giuseppe Garibaldi was. So we'll start with Antonio Meucci, which I'm sure most people know. He was the true and first inventor of the telephone. So he was born in Florence, Italy in 1808. And in his early life, he was an engineer at a theater in Florence and later moved to Havana, Cuba, where he was also an engineer at a theater. I never knew that he lived in Cuba.
Yeah, I don't know about that at all.
And he actually lived in Havana for 15 years, where he was said to do really well for himself. He was not only the chief engineer at the theater, but he also really started experimenting and inventing during his time in Havana. He became particularly interested in medical uses of electricity, and it was in 1849, while administering shock treatment to a patient, that he first conceived of using electricity and wires to convey speech. So I guess how the whole thing came about was in one of his experiments with electric shock, the patient who had one electrode in his mouth cried out in pain. I know, you should have just saw Mom's face when I read the electrode in his mouth, because if you really stop to think about that image, that's a painful one. So this patient cried out in pain, and Meucci thought he heard the sound more clearly than usual. He then placed an electrode from the apparatus in his own ear and heard the sound conveyed through the wires. And so that was kind of the beginning of the telephone invention for Meucci.
That's interesting that they shock people through the mouth.
Oh, because your mouth's wet.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder he cried out in pain. I mean, I don't get really any of how
all
that works.
But how it works either. I never pictured it being that way.
Me neither, ever. Because, when you think about like the defibrillators, I don't know if that's how you say it, but like where they put the shock pads on your chest, like that makes sense. But it's also kind of cool that this was, it's unfortunate for the guy who was in pain, but that's how he thought of the telephone. Like, I can hear through these wires, so that's kind of interesting. And I did see, and we'll talk about his wife here in a little bit, but I did read only in one source that this patient was actually his wife, because she suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. And so I don't know if that's true or not, though, but I just thought I'd throw that in there, like just trying to help relieve some of her pain.
Right.
So, but like I said, I don't know if that's true or not.
Hopefully that was the issue.
For her.
Right.
Okay.
He wasn't just mad at her.
Oh, yeah. He's not just mad at her. He's like, hey, I think you want to help me with my experiment? My breakfast wasn't very good this morning, so. So in 1850, the theater in Havana actually burnt down, and I guess, I don't know, because of this, Antonio and his wife, they moved to New York. And he tried to do a few things to make money. He opened a sausage and salami factory, but that didn't stay open long. And there was a couple other business ventures, but nothing really worked. But he was successful when he created a formula for paraffin candles, which actually became patented later on. And so he really loved experimenting and inventing. And his inventions and discoveries ranged from oil treatments for paint, an oil lamp with a glass chimney, and effervescent temperance drinks. And his most successful invention, besides the talking telegraph, was a process for making paper from wood fiber. So, him and the rag guy. And so Meucci was never able to successfully capitalize on his inventions, mainly because he was manipulated by a lot of his business associates, which really leads into the telephone situation. But from the mid-1850s to the early 1860s, his financial situation really deteriorated and basically reduced him to poverty. And a serious injury resulting from a boiler explosion aboard a Staten Island ferry ended up confining Meucci to bed for 3 months. And during this time, his wife, who was just desperate for money and was actually often pretty suspicious of his experimenting, ended up just selling all of his electrical apparatus and experimental stuff in 1871. So I think, I don't know, it sounds like she maybe wasn't fond of the experimenting and was like, here's my reason.
Used her all the time.
Use her all the time, exactly. So she's like, here's my reason to get rid of everything. We're broke. So I'm selling it all. So just backtracking a little bit, in about 1854, Meucci's wife, like we said earlier, her rheumatoid arthritis, it became so severe that she could seldom leave her bedroom. And the bedroom was on the 3rd floor of the house. And so this prompted Meucci to resume work on his speaking telegraph. And by 1861, he had built a mechanical telephone connection that would go between the bedroom and his 2 laboratories. So he had one in the basement and one behind the house. This is 1861.
It's unbelievable.
I know. And so that way he could communicate with his wife and
Right.
she could communicate, like if she needed something. But so that's pretty cool. And this is really where things started going south for Meucci. He was working in a laboratory when he lost all of his telephone models. And I'm going to put lost in quotes because Alexander Graham Bell was also working in that same laboratory. And we all know who Alexander Graham Bell is. So Meucci was in such poverty after this that he couldn't even renew the patent for the telephone, which only cost him $10. And Alexander Graham Bell jumped in at that point and renewed the patent under his name. And, years down the road, Meucci, he did end up taking Alexander to court over this, and it actually made it all the way to the Supreme Court. But in 1899, Meucci died, and so did the case. I did see, however, though, in 2002, it kind of got picked back up, and he was recognized as the official inventor of the telephone in 2002. But
Oh, that's good.
then cell phones came out and everybody forgot about the telephone. So poor Meucci. So there is Meucci's story, and let's now talk about the other Italian that lived in the house, and that was Giuseppe Garibaldi. And like I said, these are because it's a Halloween special, we're not diving into Giuseppe or Antonio. These are just really quick, brief histories for them. So Garibaldi, he was born in 1807 in France, and he came from a family of fishermen, and he actually spent a lot of his early years as a sailor. And by 1834, he was serving in the Navy for the Piedmont, Sardinia region. And in 1834, he fled to France after participating in an unsuccessful mutiny in Sardinia. And he was actually sentenced to death for his part in the mutiny, so that's probably the main reason why he fled.
A good reason.
It's a good reason, too, yeah. And so by 1836, Garibaldi, he was actually living in South America, where he gained fame as a revolutionary mercenary, and he was fighting in Brazil and Uruguay. In 1842, he met and married a Brazilian freedom fighter, Ana Maria de Jesus da Silva. And that was tricky. I think I made my way through that. But she was also mainly known as Anita. That's a little, and I will call her Anita from here on out. And they went on to have 4 children. But while he was in South America, Garibaldi formed the Italian Legion in 1843, whose black flag represented Italy in mourning, while the volcano that was in the center of the flag symbolized the dormant power that was resting in their homeland. And so it was in Uruguay that the Legion first sported the famous red shirts that they wore. And in 1848, Garibaldi returned to Italy with his Italian Legion, and they joined the movement to unify the Italian states by gaining Italian territory from foreign powers, and these battles increased Garibaldi's fame. But not all fame is good fame, because these battles were actually the cause of Garibaldi being exiled again from Italy. And this is around the time when he came to America and spent most of the time that he was in America staying at Antonio Meucci's house. But he did return to Italy in 1854, and he was fighting against the Austrians and trying to drive them out of northern Italy. And in 1860, he captured Sicily and Naples in the hope of uniting the entire peninsula under Victor Emmanuel II, who was the king of Piedmont, Sardinia. And so the eventual unification of Italy took more than a decade, and Garibaldi made several attempts to seize Rome in the 1860s, but was captured 3 times and sent back to his farm. Okay, so like I said, that was a really quick history of Garibaldi. Probably a lot of stuff is left out, but I really just want to get to the house that they both lived in and talk about all the spooky vibes it has. So the house is now run by the Order of the Sons of Italy, and you can actually go take a tour of the house.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. It's a cool looking house too. I'll post some photos to Instagram, but it's so it was built in 1840, and Meucci bought it in 1850, and the house is in the Gothic Revival design. I don't really know what that means, but it's a cool looking house regardless. And so it consists of 4 symmetrical bedrooms, has really steep ceilings, and like we talked about earlier, Meucci built a laboratory in the basement. So let's talk about how Meucci and Garibaldi met. So during a dinner party one night, Meucci, who was really struggling financially at this time, convinced Garibaldi to rent a room from him. And Garibaldi agreed. I mean, he's exiled from Italy. He needs somewhere to live. Right. And they actually really enjoyed their time together. So they would discuss their mutual want of a unified Italy. They hunted, they fished together, and just generally enjoyed each other's company. So that is how the two met. And Garibaldi, he didn't stay but maybe a year, so he wasn't there too long. But that's how the two met and how these two famous Italians ended up living in the same house together. So in 1884, Antonio's wife, Esther, she died at the home. And in 1899, Antonio died at the home as well. And they are actually both buried at the property. And you can kind of see, like, if you look at a picture online, and like I said, I'll post one, there's a really tall, like, memorial statue out in the front yard. And I think that that's where they're both buried. It's right under there. Because it also has in the front yard.
Wow.
Yeah, and it also has a fence around it. And I did read somewhere, because she died before him. She died, what was it, 1884. And he died in 1899. And I saw somewhere where because he died a few years after her, he was buried at the house. And then later on, some Italian society, Italian club, actually, Italian club sounds like a sandwich. But like, you know, it wasn't the sons or daughters of Italy, but something along those lines. I can't remember who it was. Actually had her remains moved to the house so that they could be buried together. Because when she died, he had her buried at a cemetery. And then when he died, his wishes were to be buried at the house. And so it was, I don't remember. It was a couple decades later, though. They had her remains moved, and now she's buried with him at the house.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so that's nice. Until she starts haunting the house, apparently.
I was just going to say, unless that wasn't her wishes.
That's true. Yeah, maybe she didn't want to be buried there. So a director of the museum said that, because they're both buried there, she wonders if their spirits still occupy the house. And she said that at times when she walks through the house, she feels cold spots, which I get, like, that can be associated with creepy ghost spirits kind of thing, but it's also a really old house.
Right.
So there could be some pretty good drafts going through. And she says that she hears banging noises, and even said one time she felt a hand push her as she was walking up the stairs.
Oh, wow.
That's a little creepy. And of course, she turns around and nobody's there, but at least they pushed her going up the stairs and not down the stairs. So
That's true.
There's a silver lining to everything. And so the directors and others felt that the banging noises may have been Antonio, who was still a little disgruntled in his afterlife over his failed attempts at inventing the telephone. So, you
Can't blame him.
Can't blame him, exactly, going through the house and banging things. And so,
As the phone's ringing.
Every time the phone rings, he slams his fist down on the table. Darn it. And so a lot of people hear coughing and groaning coming from the third floor area, and this is believed to be Esther, because remember how we talked about she was bedridden for a while. And so the Staten Island Paranormal Society, they have gone in and produced recordings, and the society claims that they have, caught recordings of somebody saying, "walk away," and they've taken pictures of faces that you could see, like, from the second floor window. So from outside, you could see a face in the window, even though nobody was there. Be kind of interesting.
That's creepy to me.
That's creepy, yeah. Chris Ramonto, a senior television and film major at St. John's University, he made a documentary about the museum's ghosts. And he said, quote, "I didn't discover anything, but I felt spooked when I filmed upstairs. I felt like the ghosts didn't want me there." And he went on to say that he thinks the spirits are upset that their home has been turned into a museum.
That's fair, too.
That's understandable. You have all these people walking through. And so when Jennifer Sammartino first began volunteering as a tour guide at the museum, she got the feeling that she wasn't alone there. And she wasn't the only one noticing the presence of something or someone else in the house. She said that a male voice once told her to get out when she entered the museum one day. And she also said that after this voice said that to her, she hid out in the office until another worker, Miss Gear, arrived and noticed how upset she looked. And Miss Gear asked Jennifer what happened. And before Jennifer could even say anything, Miss Gear said, "He told you to get out, didn't he?"
Wow.
I know, it gives me chills.
There's proof.
There's proof. So apparently you can, just guess that Miss Gear had been asked to leave before as well. And so,
unless it's Miss Gear being the spook.
Oh, that's true. Maybe Miss Gear's got something going on. And so Miss Gear, she was quoted saying that, they don't like it when we talk about them, which, if you're walking through a museum, giving a tour guide of a museum, you're going to talk about all the people who lived there. So probably got upset ghosts all the time. And so other museum volunteers often sense a female presence in the gallery room. And this gallery room was actually formerly the kitchen. And they call this presence or spirit, they call her Nicole after a former caretaker who lived with Meucci. And Nicole is apparently upset because the kitchen, like we said, has been, it's been removed, and that was her favorite area of the house. So, makes sense. Another thing that is supposed to have a haunting spirit wrapped around it is that of Antonio's death mask. And so, a death mask, just in case you don't know, I could guess what it was, but I still looked it up because I was like, what is that? Is basically after the person dies, they put a cast or impression on their face to capture what they look like right after they die.
Yeah, they make a cast of their or they cast their face.
Their face, yeah. And so that mask is still at the house today. And I've never read anything specifically creepy about it, but I think just the fact that it is his death mask creeps people out, along with all of the other stories going on at the house.
That's just kind of creepy to me versus why don't you just have a picture of them when they were alive?
Exactly. That feels like a better memory, but who knows? So yeah, that's the Garibaldi and Meucci Museum. Like I said, if you're ever in Staten Island, you can go tour it.
Yeah.
So
that would be interesting.
That'd be fun. You go do a podcast.
See if you ever get any of the feelings.
Exactly. Don't let anybody push you down the stairs, though. Or up the stairs. Push me up the stairs. Please push me up the stairs, not down. So,
that was fun.
That was fun. Good. I liked that one.
Except for the telephone, but...
I know. Poor Meucci. I'd be disgruntled in my afterlife, too.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Darn you, Belle! So, now, let's go to the state of Connecticut, and we're going to 1897. The New Haven Register, they published an article on September 9th, 1897, with the headline, "Is Italian Ghost Caught? Apparition in the House of Giovanni Coroni Captured." How do you capture a ghost before the Ghostbusters movie came out? I'm curious. So
maybe we'll find out.
Let's figure it out. Okay, so the newspaper reported that the Italian colony in Fairhaven was extremely excited, and of course what they meant was scared over the rumors of a ghost living in the house of Giovanni Coroni. But this ghost was said to be huge and extremely strong, and had the uncanny power to become invisible whenever it wanted.
Ooh.
So this is like a ghost on steroids. And strangely, though the ghost was not haunting the whole house, it was just haunting the bedroom of Giovanni's young son. And the ghost, it came out to haunt the young boy at the same time every night, exactly a half hour after midnight. And the ghost, of course, would appear in his room. The boy, he was 12 years old, and he was so traumatized from this haunting every night that he ended up losing a lot of weight and was actually bedridden with sickness.
You would think that they would move him.
I know. It's
out of that bedroom.
Sleep on the couch at least. Let him sleep in your room. Something like that. Why wouldn't you, if not move out of the house entirely,
right,
at least move him rooms? So, but the boy was said to have told the police that the ghost, who also resembles an old witch, so ghost on steroids and looks like a witch. So he told the police that she, and he did refer to the ghost as a she, would tell him every night that she would end up killing him one night. Then this ghost witch Thane would also tell him that she would kill his family one by one unless the family moved back to Italy.
What?
This ghost has some very specific directions. Like, I'm going to kill you one night and your family unless you all go back to Italy. So it kind of makes me wonder if this, quote, ghost just doesn't want anyone living in this house. Like, maybe this ghost lived there before, passed away, and doesn't want
and
new
they're
people
trying to convince the family to get out.
to get out. Exactly. Or if something else is going on.
Oh, no.
I don't know. So one evening, some family friends, three men to be exact, agreed to hide out in the boys' bedroom to see if they could catch the ghost or at least figure out what was going on. And they used a barrel, so I'm picturing like a wine barrel, to conceal the light they brought with them, which I kind of have a few questions about, because what kind of light was this? It's 1897. Is it like an oil lamp? A candle? Because putting either of these under a barrel seems a little dangerous to me. But anyways, so these three men, they hid in the corners of the room and waited. And of course, when it was 12:30, the men heard a strange creaking noise coming from the doorway. So this ghost on steroids that looks like a witch comes through the door. It doesn't just appear, it comes through the door. And the men said they then saw a, quote, pale radiance that wore white robes and had features that looked like a witch entering the room. So that vibes with what the little boy is saying. Looks like a witch and has the white like a ghost, so.
Right.
So when the witchy ghost looking thing got close to the boy, one of the men let out a shriek and dove at the figure. And the man and the ghost ended up in a large fight. So, so there's that. And this
the ghost is on steroids.
The ghost is on steroids, you're right. I mean, it's going to flex its muscles here. And so the ghost, it actually ended up ripping the man's shirt and basically won the fight before quickly disappearing. And the man later told the authorities that he felt like a helpless infant in the arms of the ghost.
Wow.
So, pretty strong ghost there.
Yeah.
And the ghost, it actually eventually ended up throwing the man aside and, like I said, vanished into the darkness.
Where were the other guys?
I know. It's like they're just trying to hide the light under the barrel. That's all they're just worried about. They're just hiding out. And so, yeah, it's like, what were they doing? And so the three men, they eventually helped search the house, but they couldn't find the figure again. And so the family and the men, they went to the authorities with this story, and the authorities decided that they better do a stakeout in the bedroom as well. And so the next evening, I'm assuming it's the next evening, probably within a couple of nights, they hid out in the room just like the other three men did. And just like before, the ghost walked into the room, but this time, after a long struggle, the ghost was captured.
Wow.
So I'm sure by now we've figured out that this is not really a ghost. Yeah. It was indeed a human. And this human is haunting this poor boy. And worst of all, the ghost was the boy's mother.
Wow.
Dun dun dun. And so the mother, she ended up confessing to the police that she was in fact the one haunting her son because she desperately wanted to go back to Italy. But of course her husband, he didn't want to go back to Italy, so she was hoping this scheme of hers would convince her husband to take them back to Italy. How strong was this woman?
Right. And did she not know that the police were hiding out in the room?
I know.
Because why would she go?
With the police, especially.
Yeah, knowing that her chances of getting caught.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Kind of weird.
I wonder if maybe her husband was catching on and was thinking, I think it's my wife.
Oh, so maybe she didn't know anybody was in the house.
Maybe that was even what happened with the three men.
Right.
And he was like, I think it's her. Because why would she go, even with the three men, you would think that she, like, why would you go?
Yeah, you wouldn't go either time.
Exactly. And the fact that she bested that man.
Right.
she got on top of that. Who knows? But I mean, the guy might have just been really freaked out and she might have just started thrashing and then ran out, but
yeah, it could have just been a split second too,
exactly, so. Not this long drawn out fight like rolling around on the floor like they made it sound. But later on, interestingly, the family comes out and makes a statement denying that the mother was the ghost, and they still believe a witch is making their son sick. So, according to the article, most of the Italian colony in the area actually believed the family as well. So I don't know if it was just the family maybe backtracking, maybe they were embarrassed. It's hard to say. But, I mean, at one point, according to this article, she confesses.
Right.
And then a little bit later, the family comes out denying that and saying it's a witch ghost thing.
Wonder what was their reasoning if the mother confessed?
Exactly. And, I mean, if they caught her
right.
dressed as a ghost witch, like, you're kind of guilty. So I don't know. Like I said, and I think only having the father's name, Giovanni, pretty sure that was his name. Giovanni, I don't know, the paper could have spelled his last name wrong, and then not having the son or the wife's name. I was...
Yeah, not being able to find anymore.
Exactly.
It would be fun to have saw a picture of her.
Oh my
Because...
Yeah.
Granted, like we talked, that it probably wasn't a major struggle, but
yes, exactly.
Just a quick moment of fear, and she got out.
And she got out. I know. It's just I think that's what it was too. She probably like ripped his shirt and ran,
right?
And then he said it was this big argument. So I don't know, but I thought that was kind of a.
That was a fun story.
It's fun, yeah. I mean, I felt so bad for this poor little boy, though. Like,
well, that was the horrible thing.
I know. Don't put your kid through all that again. It's like, just go back to Italy. Just
knowing you're doing that, and he's sick. Bedridden and sick, and she was accepting that over her feelings of wanting to go to Italy.
Exactly. It's like, don't put your kid through that. I actually saw at the end of the article, I meant to put it in, but I remember where they asked the doctor about the little boy, and he said, well, he's suffering from intestinal distress, but he's expected to survive. So blunt. He's expected to survive. He's gonna be fine.
Well,
had the poop scared out of him. It's fine. So,
and then knowing that it's his mother doing it.
I know.
Like, couldn't imagine as what he thought as an adult.
Be a little bit of mental distress there.
Right, it might have been all around there.
Get over the intestinal part and then deal with the mental issues that are going to come later. So, well, we seem to be staying on the East Coast because now we're going to head to Paterson, New Jersey, where all sorts of spookiness broke out in the tenement houses of the local Italian colony.
Oh, this sounds good.
So it all started on Easter Sunday in 1901. After Easter dinner at Pietro Pasquale's house, and a fight broke out, and unfortunately, Pietro, he was shot and killed. Now, his brother Sabato was at the house that evening, and he actually first admitted to killing Pietro, but after a police investigation, it turned out that Pietro's brother-in-law, Tony Galizza, was actually responsible for the murder. So I don't know why the brother
would
admitted
killing his own brother.
And I did see where Pietro, he was shot twice, and so I don't know. It's just weird that maybe it was just a big quarrel and Sabato just admitted to being involved. But later, this Tony guy, he went to prison for murdering him. So,
or maybe they both shot and he thought that.
I was wondering that too because the two bullets or the two wounds. So
and they proved one bullet came from
from Tony's gun. So and I couldn't figure out why the fight broke out. I did see somewhere where there was talk about like basically this whole quarrel went back to Italy. So basically saying that they've all kind of quarreled since they came over to America from Italy. So who knows what the fight? It could be family vendettas.
Yeah.
Who knows? So, but regardless, Pietro did end up dying that Easter, and he actually died in the kitchen, which will come into play later. About a month later, all the tenants that were living in the building started reporting some strange happenings going on. And Pietro's wife, for example, said a couple weeks after the murder, all of her faucets in her apartment would turn on. And she couldn't figure out why, of course. And and one time she reported seeing her husband's spirit roaming the hallway in the apartment. And she ran to a neighbor's apartment and was shouting, I just saw my husband and he's covered in blood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's a little jarring right there. So the Italians in the apartment building noticed that the kitchen floor where Pedro died was still bloodstained, and some said that that is where his spirit was manifesting. So, in other words, they were like, clean the blood off. But, I mean, if it's a wooden floor...
Yeah.
And this is 1897.
Yeah, so there's no way.
Sure doesn't have like that
rug over it.
Yeah, or I'm sure there was like no top coat kind of thing on those wood floors back then. So it probably just soaked right into the wood.
Yeah.
So, and so a lot of the Italians that were living in this apartment building, they agreed to stay up the next night to see if they could spot Pedro's spirit. So the next night, they said that they could hear rapping and banging noises coming from a room that had nobody in it. And scariest of all was a few of them said that they actually saw Pedro turning on faucets.
Huh.
So he's got this...
I wonder what the thing is with the water
With
faucet.
the water, exactly. He's got this fascination with that. The next day, after, they stayed up all night and watched Pedro turn the faucets on, a huge group of Italians moved out of the tenement house. They were like, we're gone. See you later. Wow. Like, this is it for us. A few Italian families did stick it out for a while, but the ghost of Pedro seemed to be moving around the whole apartment building now and not just staying in his apartment. And he was going around and turning on the faucets in everybody's apartment right around 9 p.m., which is also roughly the time that he died.
Ooh.
I know. So, and so people were also reporting that in the abandoned apartments, they heard stuff being thrown against the wall. And apparently the first group of Italians that moved out, they left so fast that they left a lot of their belongings in the building. And so they knew that this apartment was abandoned, but they would hear things being thrown around. So eventually, according to the article, all the families moved out of this apartment building and only Pedro's wife was left in the apartment building.
Wow.
Yeah, they were freaked out.
Apparently, because where do you go that quickly?
In 1897.
Right. Go find another living quarters.
Exactly. So they wanted out. They were in, it was very like, this is the Italian colony. This is where the Italians lived. So, I mean, they were just going down the street, probably, you would think. I don't know. But yeah.
They were putting them up, I guess.
That's true. Maybe going and living. Maybe they were all renting like one place together for a while. And so even kids would walk by and whisper, watch out for the dead man. So this whole situation was kind of getting past like their apartment building. Like people in the whole Italian colony knew about it. And a lot of people, they told the reporters that they don't think the spirit will rest until there is justice. And a lot of people, so this is where the water comes back. A lot of people suspected that the reason Pedro's ghost turns on the water is to wash the blood away, like to wash the blood off of him. Huh. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. The only thing that I could find after this was that Tony was convicted and sentenced to prison.
Oh, so that's why they're talking about justice. Because I was just going to say, but I thought they already had the murder.
Yeah, no, and so this was just kind of right after, like during all of that,
So I wonder what the owner of the building, I mean, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot. In the article, it talked about how he was putting signs up, like for rent,
right.
Everything's fine. But the Italians were talking about how he's going to have to do a lot of explaining to convince people to move in there because of all the scary stuff going on.
And it's in the Italian colony, so everybody's going to know.
Everybody knew. Even the kids, they were walking by like, watch out for that dead man. So...
Well, that was interesting.
The water was really interesting.
Especially because it went to all the apartments.
Exactly. At the same time every night at 9 o'clock. So...
Huh.
So that's the sad story of Pedro and his ghost, I guess you could say.
That's an eerie story.
It is an eerie story. So we're going to get off the East Coast for a while, and we're going to go down to New Orleans and head down south for a little while. Right. And so the article I found, it's so short that I think I'm just going to read it because it's so short that I can't even sum it up, but it's interesting. So,
okay.
So this article came out on October 20th, 1877, and the headline reads, "The Haunted Cell." A young Italian seeks death and is not gratified. Last night, about 11:45, a turnkey pardon, and so I had to look that up. It's basically like the warden of a jail cell, and so they called him a turnkey though. Turnkey Perdon, while making his rounds past the cells of the old tram station, discovered that a piece of twine was tied from the inside of cell number 16, better known by the police in that precinct as the haunted cell. He immediately opened the door and found a young Italian named Armand Orsay, who had been locked up, charged with being found at the corner of Dumaine and Rampart Streets under suspicious circumstances, in the act of placing the twine around his neck. The turnkey asked him what he was trying to do, and he answered that he wanted to hang himself. He said that from the time he entered the cell, he felt strange things creeping over him and heard someone calling him. He was handcuffed and taken downstairs for safekeeping. Strange to say that in the past 3 or 4 years, no less than 17 persons have attempted to destroy themselves in this cell.
Oh, wow.
I know.
But they don't know if somebody died in that or killed themselves previous?
I have no idea. I searched into this particular prison and I couldn't find anything on it. So it's just like, what it sounds like was the spirit just makes people feel like they need to hurt themselves.
Take their lives.
Oh, wow. Exactly. And, he was just basically being held like in like a county jail kind of thing. It wasn't like he was in prison for murder. Like just suspicious behavior. He's probably just drinking on the corner of the street or something. So
they need to board that cell up.
Yeah, they need to call it, turn it into a storage. Like,
there you go.
Call it good.
Cover up that keyhole, Mr. Turnkey.
Exactly, yeah.
Because that's why they call him the turnkey, because probably have the one key
that
opens every cell.
Like you could almost picture like that big old fashioned looking key. Yeah, at first when I was first reading this, I felt like an idiot because I thought it was his name, but then I realized, that's not his name is not Turnkey.
Actually, I thought that.
Did you think that? Okay, well that makes me feel better.
And I thought, is he French?
Because it's New
Orleans.
Yeah, exactly. So one more really quick article, and we're gonna head back over to the East Coast, and we're gonna go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this article came out in the Philadelphia Inquirer on February 21st, 1909. And this is a real short one, but super interesting. So the headline says, "Kissed victim's wounds. To avoid being taunted, Italian woman is said to have fulfilled superstition." So an Italian superstition that the slayer of a person must kiss the wounds of his victim to prevent being haunted figured in the trial of Miss Rosie Albert, who is charged with the murder of Vito Frappamino. Nicholas Mastriano, one of the day's witnesses, testified that after the shooting, now here it says Miss Alberti, kissed the wounds made by her bullets. This action he explained on the grounds of the old Italian superstition. So apparently this Rosie murdered this Nicholas Mastriano. Murdered Vito Frappamino. And Nicholas Mastriano, he must have walked in at, maybe he heard the gunshots. I don't know where this took place. There's nothing out there on it. And he walks in and he sees Rosie, probably still holding the gun, but kissing this man's wounds. Getting real Halloweenish.
Yeah, it is.
And so that way this man doesn't come back and haunt her. So I guess it's an old Italian superstition. So there's that one. Okay. All right. And for our last story, we're actually going to our home state of Colorado.
Oh.
Yeah. And specifically to Denver, to the Gray Stone McFarland Mansion. But this time, it is not an Italian ghost. It's actually an Italian who chases off a ghost.
Ooh. Italian style.
We're real tough in Colorado. We're real tough. All right. So for about 10 years, a ghost was said to haunt this mansion. But in 1905, when Pasquale Corte, the Italian consulate in Denver, moved into the mansion, he put a stop to all of the spooky shenanigans. So first, let's talk about the history of this mansion. The address of the mansion was 1470 Gilpin, and it was built in 1891 by a trust company. It's no longer standing today, but so this is the corner for all of our Denver listeners, Colorado listeners, this mansion was at the corner of Colfax and Gilpin. And when I looked at Google Earth, it looks like maybe an abandoned Burger King or something now, depending on which corner, because I don't know what corner it was. But it was quite the sight to see in the day. I mean, it looked like a full-blown castle. And I'll post a photo online, but it's cool looking. It's got like, kind of like Nunzio, when we talked about Nunzio Grasso, like that kind of stonework. And it has these really tall peaks. It's huge. And so this truss company that had it built, it's technically a mansion, but they had it built as individual apartments to begin with. Oh. So, but it looks like a full mansion castle kind of thing. But right when the mansion was almost completely built, rumors started swirling about the mansion being haunted. Apparently, neighbors reported seeing a blue ghostly figure floating around the house around midnight. And they also said that a light could be seen flickering in the attic window. And so once the house was complete, the owners had a lot of trouble retaining tenants. A lot of the tenants, they would come to rent a room, apartment kind of thing, and would leave after just a few days. And I'm sure, the rumors of this place being haunted were already kind of swirling around. But after the first few tenants left, the rumors just exploded all over. Yeah, it's this beautiful home, but nobody's staying. People are going to start talking about it. And so people reported hearing, quote, the pattering of unseen footsteps and slamming of doors. And so eventually, after they couldn't keep anybody, the mansion was just abandoned, and it was actually vacant for a few years. But then Austin McFarland, who worked for the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, he bought the mansion and renovated it for his family. And so this family, they would kind of report the same thing. They would have the doors slammed in their faces. They would hear people running through the house, which, I don't know. The thought of hearing somebody run through your house it's so chilly and creepy. But unfortunately, the family, they fell on hard times and they had to sell the house. The house, it was left abandoned again for a while because the new owners who bought it from the McFarland family, they couldn't get tenants to stay either. And so after a while, the house was abandoned again for the third time now, and it actually fell into ruin for a while. But Pasquale, he came to Denver, and when he saw the mansion, he immediately wanted it because it reminded him of the castles in Italy. So now when Pasquale moved in, he basically said that he wouldn't put up with any spooky things. And honestly, he pretty much didn't believe in spooky ghost kind of things. And so he went into the house with that attitude of, don't mess with me.
That's good.
So that works. And when he moved in, he hung up the shield of the Italian consulate above the front door on the outside. And rumor has it that right after he hung this up, the ghost happenings ceased. They stopped happening. No more spooky stuff.
Wow, really?
I know. What is this shield? Does the shield have something more going on? And what does it look like?
Do they have garlic bulb on it?
Exactly, yeah. Keep all the spooky stuff out. Because he did hang it on the outside. So, and so a Denver Post reporter asked him what he did to get rid of the ghost. And he told the reporter, while shrugging his shoulders and smiling, I did nothing, but to this minute I have not seen a ghost since I have been in the house. Oh yes, everyone tried to frighten me with dire tales, but I am not afraid of ghosts, and I came. Now see, the ghost has gone. So, I don't think he really ever believed the place was haunted, and
right,
it just is what it is.
Unless he was the ghost.
That's true.
He
maybe
just wanted the mansion.
He just wanted his mansion back. Maybe he was the first one to live there. So the reporter ended the article saying, as if discouraged by the debonair Signore Corte, who snaps his fingers at all ghosts and rumors of ghosts, the shadowy things seem to have fled the house. So.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool story. Because he basically snubbed out all these rumors that there was ghosts, and so.
But you kind of almost have to think that they weren't really rumors because the mansion never really was utilized.
Exactly.
And fell into disrepair.
3 times?
Right.
Yep. And where there's smoke, there's fire,
Mm-hmm.
It does make you wonder.
So, yeah, there's something there.
Something's going on. Because even before it was finished building, people started reporting weird things.
Right, yeah, before it was
Finished.
Well, I'm going with a shield and a garlic bulb.
Me too. Yeah, just needed an Italian.
Even though I just threw in the garlic bulb.
Just needed an Italian to move in to get rid of all this. So, well, that's it for today. I hope you all have a great Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween to everybody, and don't let these stories haunt you too much.
Exactly. Hope you sleep good. Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to the Halloween special, and we hope you come back to listen to more stories about Italian Americans. See you next time.
See you next time.